What happened to the Tower of Babel? Understand. In this video, we will explore the biblical history of the Tower of Babel and discover its fascinating outcome. Let's explore the construction of the Babel Tower as described in the Bible. According to the biblical account, the inhabitants of the region decided to build a tower that came to the skies as a way of demonstrating its greatness and power. Moved by ambition and pride, they began to erect this imposing structure, even challenging the divine will. The construction of the Tower of Babel symbolized men's attempt to match God and achieve divine status. However, what these builders did not expect was divine intervention and the consequences that would come. Divine punishment that resulted from the construction of the Tower of Babel. According to the biblical narrative, seeing the arrogance and pretense of the builders, God decided to intervene. As a form of punishment, he confused his tongues, causing each person to speak a different language. This divine act resulted in chaos and disagreement among the builders, making it impossible to continue the work. The confusion of tongues was the catalyst for the dispersion of peoples through the face of the earth, marking the end of the attempt to build the Tower of Babel as an act of challenge to heaven and divinity. The consequences of the dispersion of peoples through the face of the earth after the confusion of tongues in the Tower of Babel, with impaired communication and the impossibility of understanding each other, builders were forced to separate and form groups with those who shared their new language. This division resulted in different cultures, traditions, and beliefs developing around the world, marking the beginning of the cultural diversity we know today. The dispersion of peoples through the face of the earth not only ended the construction of the Tower of Babel, but also shaped the course of human history, influencing the interactions between different societies and contributing to the richness and complexity of the world in which we live. The consequences of the constructors' attempt to reach the skies through the construction of the Tower of Babel. The excessive ambition and the pursuit of grandeur resulted in challenging the established divine order. The Tower of Babel symbolized not only a physical structure, but also human arrogance by trying to match God. History teaches us about the dangers of pride and lack of humility before the sacred. The outcome of the construction of this tower serves as a powerful reminder about the limits of human ambition and the consequences that may arise by challenging divine designs. The moral and spiritual lessons behind the history of the Tower of Babel. The biblical narrative of the Tower of Babel teaches us about the importance of cooperation, humility, and respect before the divine. The constructors' attempt to challenge divine order and reach the heavens reflects human nature in their pursuit of power and grandeur. However, divine punishment and resulting dispersion highlight the dangers of arrogance and lack of reverence. The history of the Tower of Babel serves as a reminder about the boundaries of the excessive ambition and the need to recognize our position before the sacred. By reflecting on this narrative, we are invited to consider the ethical and spiritual implications of our actions, as well as to value the cultural and linguistic diversity that arose from the dispersal of peoples. The Tower of Babel invites us to seek a greater understanding of our place in the world and the meaning of our aspirations in relation to the divine. The symbolism behind the narrative of the Tower of Babel. The construction of the tower not only represented the excessive ambition and pride of the builders, but also symbolized the attempt to challenge the established divine order. The idea of building a structure that reached the heavens reflected the search for power and greatness, as well as the desire to equate with their own gods. In addition, The Tower of Babel can be interpreted as a symbol of linguistic and cultural diversity that arose from the dispersion of peoples. Each new language created after the divine event represented not only a barrier in communication, but also the formation of unique and distinct identities around the world. The history of the Tower of Babel invites us to reflect on the limits of human ambition, the consequences of divine disobedience, and the value of cultural diversity as an essential part of human fabric. The importance of humility before the divine, as reflected in the history of the Tower of Babel. The biblical narrative teaches us about the dangers of arrogance and pretense by challenging divine designs. In building the Tower of Babel, the inhabitants demonstrated a lack of respect and reverence before God, seeking to match him in power and grandeur. However, divine intervention and subsequent confusion of languages served as a powerful reminder about the importance of recognizing our finite position in relation to divine infinity. The story of the Tower of Babel invites us to cultivate humility, gratitude, and respect before the sacred, reminding us that we are limited beings in the face of divine greatness and wisdom. As the history of the Tower of Babel resonates to the present day, influencing linguistic, cultural, and religious issues around the world. The construction of the Tower of Babel and the subsequent confusion of languages not only marked a divine event on the biblical narrative, but also had a lasting impact on the way societies have developed and related throughout history. The dispersal of peoples resulting from this event generated a multiplicity of languages, cultures, and traditions that shaped the human diversity we see today. In addition, the history of the Tower of Babel raises questions about cultural identity, intercultural communication, and the search for meaning in an increasingly globalized world. As we examine the reflexes of this ancient narrative in our day, we are invited to reflect on the complexities of linguistic and cultural diversity, as well as the timeless lessons of humility, cooperation, and mutual respect present in biblical history. Let's deepen the spiritual and cultural meaning of the narrative of the Tower of Babel. In addition to being a biblical story about divine punishment and dispersion of peoples, the Tower of Babel carries deep symbolisms that echo through the ages. This narrative can be interpreted as a reminder of the importance of humility before the divine and the need to recognize the limits of human ambition. The construction of the tower represents not only the search for power and grandeur, but also the attempt to challenge the order established by God. The confusion of tongues and the dispersal of peoples reflect the consequences of disobedience and lack of reverence for the sacred. By exploring the spiritual meaning of the Tower of Babel, we are invited to reflect on our own attitudes towards divinity, as well as the ethical and moral values that permeate our existence. The story of this tower invites us to contemplate the depths of the divine mystery and to recognize our position as finite beings before infinity. Through this timeless narrative, we are urged to seek a greater understanding of the sacred and to cultivate virtues such as humility, gratitude, and mutual respect in our lives. Let us reflect on the lasting impact of the narrative of the Tower of Babel on culture and spirituality. The history of the Tower of Babel transcends time and borders, echoing through the centuries as a powerful reminder about human nature and its relationship with the divine. The construction of the tower, the confusion of tongues, and the dispersal of peoples symbolize not only divine punishment, but also the complexity of human relations and the cultural diversity that enriches our world. Well, By exploring the legacy of the Tower of Babel, we are invited to contemplate the moral and spiritual lessons present in this ancient biblical narrative. History challenges us to seek greater understanding of ourselves, our origins, and the deepest meaning behind our aspirations and achievements. May the Babel Tower saga continue to inspire us to cultivate values such as humility, cooperation, and mutual respect in our way to the understanding of the divine and the construction of a more harmonious world. Subscribe to the channel for more content about biblical stories and spiritual reflections. Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave your like, share this video, and activate notifications to not miss any content. Until next time,